I will be talking about OAI PMH, Open Archives Initiative Protocol for Metadata Harvesting. In the context of digital repositories, this is a very important protocol. Why is it so? Let us go into some background. We know that no library contains all the documents in the world. This problem is addressed by creating networks of libraries. That way, so that they can have resource sharing, and a pool of libraries probably would be near to the completion of the entire world documents in a network. Similar is the situation in case of digital libraries. No digital library is expected to have all the documents in the world. So, the solution is obviously networking the digital repositories. So, obviously any networking warrants standards, because the interoperability question comes into picture. How do they handshake with each other, exchange data among the network computers or the DSpace instances or any digital repository instances. So, naturally such standards are OAI PMH is one standard, which is the protocol for metadata harvesting. Then there are other metadata standards, that is the harvesting standard. This is a metadata standard. Of course, the most commonly used metadata standard is Dublin Core or its sibling Qualified Dublin Core, MarkXML, MARTS, ETDMS and other things. So, standards, you have to have standards with regard to character encoding also. Fortunately, in the recent years, Unicode has evolved as a world standard for all the scripts in the world, and almost XML also became a kind of a standard language, because one can extend the markup, that is the elements in a markup language. That is the reason, whether it is RDF or OWL or Dublin Core, for many things XML is being used. Now, in the library and information science field, we have a older protocol called Z39.50 protocol. That shows really the forethought of the library and information science community, where they started sharing the metadata, or in the past it was called cataloging data in the context of libraries. So, how do we share the cataloging data across various institutions or servers? For that, the protocol was Z39.50 protocol. However, now mostly for various reasons, OAI PMH protocol became more predominant protocol, but it does not mean that Z39.50 protocol is not being used anymore. For that matter, those who are using Koha, probably they have come across how to do shared cataloging. That is, whenever they enter some ISBN, probably in some library that catalog card was already done, they can simply download and put it into the local Koha instance, so that the cataloger need not prepare another catalog for the same document if he can download the MARC21 record for that from any of the world servers of basically Z39 based. But there is a slight difference between the approach of Z39.50 and OAI PMH. OAI PMH indexes much like the general search engines. That is, if we distinguish between service providers and data providers, that is, if you have a DSpace instance where you have data you are hosting on your repository about digital objects and their metadata, your repository is a data provider. But again, if somebody collects metadata from such repositories and provides a search facility, we can call him as a service provider. So, if you see Google, I mean why we are comparing this with web search engines is search engines like Google and Yahoo, they go to various sites, index the web pages and provide a search engine, and it will not collect the entire site into Google servers. It only collects the URLs and the search terms and indexes them on their local database, on Google database. Whenever somebody searches, it shows the results from the local, I mean Google servers, but when somebody clicks, it takes the person, end user, to the original site. That means it collects data about each sites, all the words and their URLs, and puts it in its own databases or similar things. Whereas Z39.50 protocol does not collect any data about any data provider, that is from any repository it does not collect. It does a concurrent search. That means when a end user is making a search, then it goes to various servers and throws the search query at each of those servers and collects the retrieved records from those servers and displays it to the end user. So, that means it does not store any information, rather metadata or any information from the data providers. This is the major difference between OAI PMH and Z39.50 protocol. Besides, of course, Z39.50 protocol is a very complex protocol, whereas OAI PMH is a fairly simple one, which actually is one of the reasons for its popularity. So, the present protocol version is 2, and it was, I think, sometime in 2002 June it was freezed. Maybe later versions may come afterwards, but in the last 4 years we do not see any new versions coming up. That means it is a fairly sturdy protocol. So, the official site is openarchives.org. This is the official site of the OAI PMH protocol. Now, let us get a little familiar with the terminology. What is a harvester, what is a data provider, what is an identifier, all these will clarify how the OAI PMH protocol is used across data providers and service providers. A harvester, this is a service actually. A harvester is a client application that issues OAI PMH requester. So, that means if there is a software which issues a OAI PMH verb, which we will get soon familiarized what kinds of verbs are available with this particular protocol, then you are running a harvester service. For example, some list records or something is there, some kind of a verb is there, which collects information about all the records are in a collection or a digital repository and puts them in place. A harvester is operated by a service provider as a means of collecting metadata from various repositories. For example, if you look into the service which we have been running for a long time, perhaps the first such harvester service in the field of library and information science, we call it SDL, that is Search Digital Libraries, which collects metadata from various digital repositories dealing with LIS documents. That means we are running a harvester, or we are running, other words, a service provider. We are playing the role of a service provider by running a harvester service, and this harvester service essentially issues OAI verbs to collect metadata from various repositories. Then what is a repository? A repository is a network accessible server that can process OAI PMH requests. So, here a data provider is nothing but a repository. For example, if you have created or initiated a digital library of your own or an institutional repository of your institute, we can say you are running a repository service, or otherwise called you are a data provider. That means you are providing data for others by providing a search facility or anything. Okay. So, for that you may use DSpace or ePrints or CDS Invenio like that. A repository is managed by a data provider to expose metadata to harvesters. Of course, just by initiating or installing a repository software is not good enough. Probably you have to invoke the OAI PMH protocol. For example, if you are using DSpace, in the Tomcat web apps, you may have XML UI, JSP UI, which provide mostly the interfaces. But in addition, you must be having a directory called OAI. That means you are accepting to expose your metadata through OAI PMH protocol to others. But say for example, in your Tomcat web apps directory, if you don't put OAI, that means nobody can capture metadata from your repository. That means you do not want to share your metadata with service providers. So, normally if you don't, if you have only JSP UI, XML UI, means you are providing only the interfaces, XML UI interface to your repository or JSP UI interface to your repository. But if you put OAI, that means you are giving OAI interface. But in the recent versions, you can find one more powerful interface that is given by DSpace is REST. That is REST protocol, wherein people can, many programmers can write programs called API, application program interfaces. Through REST protocol, they can get a host of information about your digital repository. Anyhow, so basically a repository is managed by data providers. That means whoever has a DSpace or ePrints instance, they are a repository owner or at least administrator. Then what is a resource? A resource is the object or stuff that metadata is about. As of course, in some of these presentations, I said that basically whether digital resource or digital item, digital object, digital document, they can be used interchangeably. More or less they are synonymous in nature. Basically it is a digital object. The nature of a resource, whether it is physical or digital, whether it is stored in the repository or in a constituent part of another database, is outside the scope of OAI PMH. So, this particular protocol really does not bother whether the object is a physical object or a digital object, because it bothers more about the metadata of the resource. Okay. So, whether it is a digital or a physical object really does not matter to the OAI PMH protocol. An item is constituent of a repository from which metadata about a resource can be disseminated. Again, here you may call it an item or a document or a digital object or whatever it is, but anyhow in OAI PMH language, a digital object is called an item. So that it really does not matter whether the item is a physical or digital version of it, of something. That metadata may be disseminated on the fly from the associated resource, crosswalked from some canonical form actually stored in the repository. So, usually each item includes not only the digital object, but also the metadata. The metadata can be in Dublin Core or any other schema, but in any case there must be, or there some people will provide a provision for crosswalk to another metadata schema. A record. A record is a metadata in specific metadata format. That means an item includes digital object and a record. So, when we talk about a record, we are referring to metadata of an item. A record is returned as an XML encoded byte stream in response to a protocol request to disseminate a specific metadata format from a constituent item. We will see, for example, down OAI in the following slides, we will be using get record or list records or some kind of a thing. Then we will know what exactly a record contains. Of course, it contains metadata of a particular item. Unique identifier. Again, unique identifier is the one of the most important constituents of a OAI PMH protocol. I think without unique identifiers, aggregating metadata from various repositories will have no meaning because it does not lead the searcher anywhere. So, unique identifier unambiguously identifies an item within a repository. The unique identifier is used in OAI PMH requests for extracting metadata from the item. So, you can retrieve the record, that is metadata about an item, using the unique identifier also. The format of the unique identifier must correspond to that of URI, Uniform Resource Identifier syntax. Repositories may implement the OAI identifier. Role of identifier. Unique identifier plays two roles in the protocol. One is with regard to response. Identifiers are returned by both list identifiers, list record requests. These are the OAI requests or OAI verbs. There are only 6 verbs which are not difficult to memorize, but you do not have to really memorize because that is the burden of the software developers who develop a service provider software. Request. An identifier in combination with metadata prefix is used in the get record as a means of requesting a particular record in a specific metadata format of an item. So, now let us go into the OAI PMH verbs. There are only 6 verbs which are easier to learn. The basic verb is identify, that is this verb, if it has been shot at some repository, it returns some information about a particular repository. For example, its date stamp, granularity and other things. So, the way to use this particular verb called identify is, we take the base URL of a repository. For example, the LDL, the base URL is http drtc isi bang acn /OAI/request. This is the base URL. Okay. Base URL is most important to add any of the OAI PMH verbs. So, any verb is added preceded by a question mark, verb equal to identify. This is the way we use this, but anyhow in day to day work practically we may not use it because only we deal with OAI base URLs when we are collecting metadata of a particular repository. This is if you see, this is the output of, in case of DSpace, good old days DSpace used to display a kind of clumsy or cluttery XML version of the output, but of late I think they added some cosmetics to the output and displays this is the output of the identify. So, you can see here repository name is there, the email address of the person who is maintaining the repository is there. So, like that there is lot of information about identify, but most importantly you can see other metadata verbs. As we have total 6 verbs, we have already used identify. You can see the rest of the verbs are written here. So, other verbs, if we go into the things, list set, that means in case of DSpace, we have various collections under each community or sub-community. So, here set you can say more is equal to that of a collection in DSpace, but again this is the case with DSpace, but ePrints and other things organize the digital collections in a completely different way. For example, ePrints allows you to use some kind of DDC and other classification schedules to arrange the entire list of documents, in which case each heading is a set. In DSpace it is called a collection. So is the case with other digital repository software. A set is similar to that of a set of items, okay, where a few similar items are grouped is called a set. In DSpace we call it a collection. So, list sets, this verb is essential because it displays how the digital repository is organized, so that tomorrow if you want to do selective harvesting, that means you do not want to collect metadata of the entire repository, but you want to collect metadata of only a particular set. So, before that you should know how the digital repository content is organized into various sets. So, it provides obviously the listing of sets, and the way to use this verb is you have the base URL, that we know the base URL is always in case of LDL, the DRTC repository, it is DRTC ISI bang ACIN /OAI/request. This is the base URL. Afterwards, we have to use the verb list sets. It is fairly straightforward. Verb equal to list sets. Remember, the list sets has used what is called camelback notation. That means the two words are combined into one word, but to distinguish, good old days we were using either a hyphen or underscore, but this in camelback notation we use each word a capital letter, so that it goes up and down. So, list sets is one word where L is capital, S is capital. So, it pulls out the output of all the sets that are in the repository. Now, list metadata formats, that means what are all the metadata schema the digital repository supports. See, some repositories may support only Dublin core or qualified Dublin core, and some repositories may support some other schema. DSpace, as of today, it supports DC, qualified DC, MARC XML, MODS, ETDMS, UKETD, DIDL, RDF, like that. So many metadata schema it supports. That means whatever data is there in DSpace for every particular digital item, it crosswalks or retroconverts in the old language. It crosswalks into one of these schema, whichever schema you have mentioned. That means if you say I want to extract metadata in MODS schema from digital repository, okay, that is why we give this address. Okay. So, again if you see list metadata formats is camelback notation, L capital, M capital, F capital. So, is the case list identifiers. That means I want to retrieve only a particular digital identifier or a persistent identifier. Again here you see list identifiers L capital, I capital, but again it should be followed by in what metadata prefix, and that means in what metadata schema you want, or if you want to restrict, no, I want documents from 2002 onwards. Like that you can mention that. Get record, that is you want to get a particular record. So, you give the identifier number and metadata prefix number. Then list records will list all the records, but again here we have used and from equal to so and so date. That means any record published after 2002 December it should be retrieved. So, one of the things selective harvesting. How much selective harvesting DSpace or OAI PMH for that matter allows. So, you can collect metadata of the entire repository, or if you want metadata of a particular set you can do, or metadata of items added after a particular date or between two dates you can do, or you can give a single identifier. This is called selective harvesting. So, some of the useful sites with regard to OAI PMH, the official site is openarchives.org. If you want to test your this one, of course, there is one site from Virginia Tech, or if you have to register your repository, always go to Open Archives and register your repository so that others will know what is the base URL of your repository to collect metadata from your repository. Guessing the base URL is not possible unless the repository administrator provides somewhere on the net what exactly is the OAI base URL of his repository. So, this is essential. So, OAI PMH is a powerful protocol to collect metadata of all digital items in the world. With that we conclude.